The Iron Mule smelled like three things: ozone, recycled hydraulic fluid, and whatever I was heating up on the hot plate. Tonight it was protein stew. The package said beef flavor, but anyone who's spent more than a decade in the Outer Rim knows that real beef hasn't been seen in this sector since the last trade wars. It was a brown, thick sludge that needed a lot of hot sauce to be edible, but it was hot and it kept you alive. I stirred the pot with a metal spoon that had been bent and straightened out a dozen times. Clink, clink, clink. The sound echoed off the bare metal walls of the mess hall. I wasn't eating alone tonight, and that was a problem. At the far end of the long, scratched metal table sat a bundle of gray wool blankets. Inside that bundle was a girl. I'd fished her out of a drifting escape pod in the scrapyard sector 6 hours ago. The pod was a high-end model, sleek white, no serial numbers. It looked like an egg made of porcelain floating in a sea of rusted junk. When I cracked it open, the cryo-seal had hissed like a dying snake, and there she was. Blue skin pale like ice that's been deprived of oxygen, pointed ears that twitched at every creak of the ship's hull, and eyes, huge violet eyes, that hadn't blinked since I brought her on board. She was shivering. Not just a little tremble, but a bone-deep vibration that shook the table she was leaning against. "It's almost ready," I said. My voice sounded loud in the small room. It's a gravelly voice. Years of shouting over engine noise and breathing unfiltered recycled air will do that to you. It's not gourmet, but it'll put heat in your blood. She didn't answer. She just watched my hands. She watched me reach for 2 tin bowls from the magnetic rack. She watched me pour the thick brown stew. She watched me tear a chunk of stale bread in half. I walked over and placed the bowl in front of her. The steam rose up, carrying the sharp scent of cayenne pepper and artificial salt. "Eat," I ordered gently. I sat down opposite her, groaning slightly as my knees popped. 45 years old, and 20 of them spent kneeling on cold deck plates fixing thruster couplings. The body remembers every bruise. She looked at the spoon. Her hand emerged from the blankets. It was slender, delicate. Her fingernails were manicured, painted a shimmering silver. There were no calluses, no grease stains, no scars. These were hands that had never tightened a bolt or scrubbed a floor. She picked up the spoon with trembling fingers. She took a sip. Then she coughed, her eyes watering. "Too spicy?" I asked, taking a mouthful of my own. "You get used to it. The spice kills the taste of the recyclers." "It is warm," she whispered. Her voice was like glass, fragile and sharp. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I grunted. "I haven't decided what to do with you. You have no ID chip. Your pod had no beacon. By rights, I should have towed you to the nearest station and let the marshals deal with it. But the marshals in this sector, well, let's just say they'd probably sell that pod for scrap and leave you on the curb." She lowered the spoon. The fear in her eyes spiked. "Please," she said, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Do not give me to the marshals. Do not let them scan me." I chewed a piece of the tough bread, studying her. "I've been a soldier, a mercenary, and now a scavenger. You learn to read people. You learn to spot the liars, the desperate, and the dangerous." She was desperate, yes, but there was something else. A kind of ingrained arrogance. Even terrified, she sat with a straight spine. She held the cheap tin spoon like it was silverware. "Who are you?" I asked. "And don't give me a fake name. I can smell a lie better than I can smell a coolant leak." She hesitated, looking at the dark porthole where the stars were just streaks of light. "I am Elara," she said finally. "Just Elara." "Just Elara," I repeated flatly. And just Elara. Why was a girl with hands soft as silk floating in a cryopod in the middle of a debris field? That's where people dump trash, not people. She flinched at the word trash. "I was discarded," she said. I stopped eating. "Discarded?" "My father," she said, her grip tightening on the spoon until her knuckles turned white. "He is a man of high standards. Perfection is his currency. He demands it from his ships, his soldiers, and his bloodline." She looked down at the stew, watching a bubble rise to the surface. "I was born with a defect," she continued softly. "My neural pathways, they do not synchronize with the standard interface. I cannot connect to the data sphere like the others. I am silent. In a world where everyone is connected, I am alone." I leaned back, the metal chair creaking. "So you're not telepathic? That's the defect?" "To my people, it is like being born without eyes," she explained. "For years, he hid me. He tried to fix me. Genetic resequencing, neural implants, painful procedures that lasted for days." She shivered again, and this time it wasn't from the cold. "When I turned 20, He decided the investment was no longer viable. He said I was a waste of resources, a broken cog that slowed down the machine. I felt a tightness in my chest. It was an old feeling. Rage the quiet, simmering kind. "So he tossed you," I said. My voice was low, dangerous. "He put me in the pod," she corrected. "He set the coordinates for the scrapyard. He said trash belongs with trash." The silence in the mess hall stretched out heavy and suffocating. The only sound was the hum of the Iron Mule's engines. My ship, my home. A ship built from salvaged parts. A ship that the shipyard said was too old, too broken, too ugly to fly. "Trash," I muttered. I stood up, grabbing my bowl and hers. She flinched, thinking I was angry at her. "Finish your water," I said, walking to the sink. "Then get some sleep. You take the starboard bunk. It's got a lock, use it." "You believe me?" she asked, surprised. I turned on the faucet. The water came out sputtering, brown for a second before running clear. "Elara, look around you," I said, gesturing to the scarred bulkheads, the exposed wiring in the ceiling, the flickering light panel. "This entire ship is made of things people threw away. The engine block, salvaged from a wrecked tanker. The nav computer, pulled it out of a dumpster on Theta 9. Even me. The military discharged me 10 years ago because they said I was too old and too stubborn to follow new orders." I looked her in the eye. "On the Iron Mule, we don't believe in trash. We believe in spare parts. We believe that if something is broken, you don't toss it. You fix it. You find a new use for it. And sometimes the broken things work better than the new ones because they've got something to prove." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. For the first time, the fear in her eyes receded, replaced by confusion, and maybe a little hope. "Go to sleep, kid," I said, turning back to the dishes. "We've got work to do tomorrow. If you're going to eat my food, you're going to earn your keep. No free rides. Hand me the 12mm wrench. No, the other one. The one with the blue tape on the handle." I was lying on my back under the main atmospheric scrubber, a tangle of pipes and wires hanging above my face. Oil dripped onto my cheek, hot and smelling of sulfur. A blue hand appeared in my vision holding the correct wrench. "This one?" Elara asked. "That's the one," I grunted, taking it. "Now hold that flashlight steady. Aim it right at the coupling." She did as she was told. The light didn't waver. It had been 3 days. 3 days of me expecting her to break, to cry, to complain about the grease or the noise or the smell. But she hadn't. She was clumsy, sure. She didn't know a hydro spanner from a soup ladle. The first time I told her to scrub the deck, she used dish soap instead of solvent and turned the corridor into a slip and slide. But she tried. She watched everything I did with an intensity that was almost unnerving. "Why does it make that noise?" she asked, her voice echoing in the cramped crawl space. "The thumping?" I strained, tightening a bolt that was rusted shut. "That's the compressor piston, it's slightly misaligned. Has been for years. I've tried to true it, but the metal is warped." "It sounds like a heartbeat," she said. I paused, I listened. Thump, hiss, thump, hiss. "I guess it does," I said. "She's an old girl, she's got a murmur." I finished the bolt and slid out from under the unit, wiping the oil from my face with a rag. Elara was sitting cross-legged on the deck plates wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit I'd dug out of storage. It was huge on her. She had rolled the sleeves up to her elbows and tied the waist with a piece of cargo strapping. She looked ridiculous, and somehow she looked right. She handed me a bottle of water without me asking. She was learning the rhythm, the process. "You have scars," she said, pointing to the jagged white line running down my forearm. "Hazards of the trade," I said, drinking the water. "That one was a plasma burn. Pirate boarding party 5 years back. They thought a lone scavenger would be an easy mark." "What happened to them?" "They're floating in the nebula now," I said simply. "I vented the airlock while they were trying to cut through the inner door. Like I said, I fix problems." She looked at her own hands. They were no longer pristine. There was dirt under her fingernails. A smudge of grease on her wrist. She rubbed her thumb over it as if testing the texture. "My father, he never let me touch anything," she said quietly. "Everything in the palace was automated. The walls cleaned themselves. The food appeared on the table. If I dropped a glass, a drone would catch it before it hit the floor. He said that labor was for the lower castes, that royalty should never struggle." "Sounds boring," I said, standing up and stretching my back. "It was," she admitted. She looked up at me. "Ronin, am I useful?" The question caught me off guard. It was so raw, so honest. I looked at the atmospheric scrubber. The light on the panel had turned from angry red to a steady, pulsing green. The air in the room already felt fresher. "You held the light," I said. "You handed me the wrench. I didn't have to crawl out to get it. Saved me 10 minutes of back pain." "Yeah, Elara, you're useful." She smiled. It was a small, shy thing, but it lit up her face better than the flashlight. "I would like to learn more," she said. "I want to know how the ship works. I want to know and why the piston thumps." "Careful, kid," I chuckled. "You start understanding machines, you stop understanding people. Machines make sense, people don't." I was about to explain the basics of hydraulic pressure when the ship lurched. It wasn't a natural movement, it wasn't turbulence. It was the feeling of a massive gravitational displacement. Something huge had just dropped out of hyperspace right on top of us. The red alert klaxon began to blare, a harsh rhythmic scream that made Elara clap her hands over her sensitive ears. "Proximity alert," the ship's computer droned. "Class 5 vessel detected. Signature match, Imperial flagship." I froze. Class 5? That wasn't a patrol boat. That was a city killer, a dreadnought. "Elara," I said, my voice dropping into the combat register I hadn't used since the war. "Get to the cockpit now." We ran. I could hear her boots pounding on the metal grating behind me. We burst into the cockpit and I stopped dead. Through the viewport, the universe had disappeared. It was blocked out by a wall of black metal. The ship in front of us was so big it had its own gravitational pull. It bristled with turrets, sensor arrays, and hangar bays large enough to swallow the Iron Mule whole. And on the side, emblazoned in gold that shone even in the darkness of space, was the crest of the Imperial House. "He found me," Elara whispered. She grabbed the back of my pilot's chair, her knuckles turning white. "How? How could he find me?" "He didn't find you," I said, scanning the sensor readings. "He's scanning the whole sector. Look at the energy output. He's doing a deep bioscan. He's looking for a specific genetic marker." I turned to her. She was shaking again, that bone-deep terror returning. "He's looking for you," I said. The comms panel lit up. "Incoming transmission," the computer announced. "Priority override audio only." I didn't touch the button. The transmission opened itself. "That's Imperial arrogance for you. They don't knock." "Unidentified scavenger vessel," a voice boomed. It was smooth, cultured, and cold as absolute zero. "This is High Chancellor Vane, speaking for His Imperial Majesty Emperor Xylos. We have detected a biological anomaly on your ship, a discarded asset that belongs to the Crown." Elara whimpered. I put a hand on her shoulder, squeezing tight. "You are harboring Imperial property," the voice continued. "Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Surrender the asset immediately, and we may allow you to keep your lives. Resist, and you will be vaporized." I looked at the massive ship. I looked at my console. My shields were at 100%, but against that dreadnought, they were like tissue paper. My weapons, a couple of mining lasers and a kinetic cannon meant for breaking up asteroids. I looked at Elara. She was staring at the floor, defeated. "I will go," she whispered. "Ronin, you cannot fight them. They are perfect. They are the Empire. Please let me go. Save your ship." She started to turn toward the airlock. "Sit down," I barked. She froze. "What?" I said, "Sit down." I spun the pilot's chair around and pointed to the co-pilot's seat. "Strap in." "But I told you," I growled, flipping switches on the overhead panel. The engines roared to life, a deep, angry growl that vibrated through the deck plates. "On the Iron Mule, we don't throw things away. And we sure as hell don't hand over crew members to people who call them assets." I grabbed the comms mic. I could feel the adrenaline flooding my system, that old familiar drug. "Imperial vessel!" I shouted into the mic, my voice raspy and defiant. "This is Captain Ronin. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any assets on board. Just me and my apprentice, and we're busy fixing a compression piston." "You are making a mistake, Captain," the voice replied, devoid of emotion.
"We are locking weapons. Lock away!"
I yelled, slamming the throttle forward. "But you better check your scanners, pal. Because this isn't just a scavenger ship. This is a piece of junk fueled by spite and bad coffee, and you're about to find out why you never mess with a working man's tools." I looked at Elara. She was strapped in, eyes wide, terror warring with awe. "Grab the auxiliary power coupling, kid," I shouted as the first warning shot rocked the ship. "We're going to show these gold-plated snobs how we do things in the scrapyard. Stabilizers are gone." Elara screamed over the roar of the engines. She was gripping the co-pilot's console with both hands, her knuckles white against the dark metal. "They're not gone," I shouted back, wrestling with the yoke. It felt like trying to steer a bull by its horns. "They're just enthusiastic, hold on." I slammed the throttle into reverse thrust. The Iron Mule shuddered, groaning like a dying beast. A beam of green energy, thick as a tree trunk, slashed past our viewport. It was close enough to boil the paint off the hull. "He missed," Elara gasped. "He didn't miss," I grunted, sweat stinging my eyes. "He's hurting us. Look at the tactical display." I pointed to the screen. The massive Imperial Dreadnought wasn't just shooting at us. It was launching smaller drone fighters, sleek silver needles that swarmed like angry wasps. They were forming a net, pushing us toward the Dreadnought's open hangar bay. "They want to take us alive," Elara whispered, terror choking her voice. "They want to reprocess me." "Not today, kid," I muttered. I flipped a row of toggle switches above my head. Click, 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 analog switches. None of that touchscreen garbage the new ships used. When you flipped a switch on the Iron Mule, you felt the mechanical connection. You knew something was happening. "Computer," I barked. "Dump the auxiliary water tanks. Vent them now." "Warning," the computer droned. "Venting water will deplete life support reserves." "Do it." A cloud of flash-frozen ice crystals erupted from the rear of our ship. It wasn't a weapon, but against the sensitive sensors of the Imperial drones, it was like throwing a handful of sand in someone's eyes. The drone formation broke, confused by the sudden cloud of debris. I used that split second to dive. We plummeted toward the asteroid field below, the scrapyard where I'd found Elara. "We cannot fly in there," Elara cried. "The debris density is 90%. We will crash." "You will crash," I corrected, my hands dancing over the controls. "I will navigate. I know every rusted hull in this graveyard. I've scrapped half of them myself." We dove into the field. Twisted metal, shattered hulls of ancient freighters, and clouds of metallic dust whizzed past our cockpit. I flew by instinct, feeling the ship's dimensions, dodging a floating engine block by inches. The Dreadnought couldn't follow. It was too big, too perfect. It stayed above the field like a shark circling a reef it couldn't enter. "We are safe?" Elara asked, her chest heaving. "No," I said, watching the sensors. "We're trapped. We can hide in this junk for a while, but our oxygen won't last forever. And that ship up there? It has a tractor beam that can pull a moon out of orbit. Once they get a lock..." As if on cue, the ship groaned. A low vibrating hum began to build, vibrating in my teeth. The Iron Mule stopped moving forward. We started sliding backward, up out of the debris field. "Tractor lock established," the computer announced calmly. "Engine output insufficient." "No, no, no." Elara unbuckled her straps. She stood up, her face a mask of tragic determination. "Ronin, let me go. I will surrender. If I go to the airlock now, maybe they will let you live." "Sit down," I snapped. "I am a defect," she shouted, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. "I am a broken thing. You said it yourself, I am useless. Why die for trash?" I spun the pilot's chair around. The look on my face must have been terrifying because she froze. "I didn't say you were trash," I growled. "I said I fix broken things. And right now, the only thing broken is that Dreadnought's attitude." I looked at the massive ship on the screen. It was pulling us in, slow and steady. It was perfect, flawless. Every system synchronized, every circuit in harmony. And then it hit me. "Harmony," I whispered. "What?" Elara asked, wiping her eyes. "The Empire," I said, standing up and ripping the panel off the communications console. "They run on a hive grid. Everything is connected. The engines talk to the weapons talk to the life support. It's a symphony of perfection." I looked at Elara. "And you said your defect was static." "Yes," she sniffled. "My neural patterns do not sync. I create dissonance. It hurts them to be near me." I grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. It was the grin of a man who just found a 10mm socket in a pile of junk. "Elara," I said, handing her a headset with frayed wires. "Put this on." "Why?" "Because we're going to make a phone call." I started splicing wires, bypassing the safety protocols on the ship's transmitter. I needed raw power. I needed to turn our comms array into a directed energy weapon, not a laser, a scream. "The tractor beam," I explained, working fast as sparks showered my hands. "It's a two-way connection. It's gripping us with gravitons, but it's also reading our ship's data. It's trying to hack our computer to shut down our engines." "They are trying to sync with us," Elara realized. "Exactly," I said, twisting two thick cables together. "They opened a door to let themselves in. We're going to throw a grenade through it." I pointed to the headset. "Put it on. I'm going to patch your bio-neural signature directly into the transmitter. When I say now, I want you to push everything you feel into that mic. Every fear. Every time your father called you broken. Every cold night in that pod. I want you to be the glitch, Elara. Be the static. But it will hurt, she whispered. The feedback, it'll hurt, I promised. But it'll hurt them more. The Iron Mule was lifted clear of the asteroid field. We were rising toward the Dreadnought's hangar bay, a gaping mouth filled with blinding white light. Proximity alert, the computer warned. Docking imminent. Ready, kid? I asked, my hand hovering over the transmit switch. Elara closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. She didn't look like a shivering girl anymore. She looked like a storm waiting to break. I am ready, she said. Then sing for me, I said. And I flipped the switch. It wasn't a sound. It was a tear in the fabric of the digital world. Elara screamed, not with her voice, but with her mind. Through the headset, her neural defect, that chaotic, unsynchronized, beautifully human mess of emotions, was amplified 10,000 times by my ship's transmitter. It shot up the tractor beam like lightning striking a lightning rod. On the screen, we saw the result instantly. The Dreadnought didn't explode, it seized. The pristine white lights along its hull flickered and turned a sickly, jagged red. The perfectly synchronized drone swarm suddenly lost formation, crashing into each other like confused birds. The tractor beam wavered, then collapsed. The Iron Mule dropped like a stone. Engines, I shouted, slamming the throttle. Full power! We roared away, skimming the surface of the asteroids. Behind us, the mighty Imperial Dreadnought was drifting sideways, its engines flaring randomly. What happened to them? Elara gasped, pulling the smoking headset off. She looked exhausted, her blue skin pale, but her eyes were burning. You gave them a headache, I laughed, wiping blood from my nose. The feedback had rattled my teeth. You introduced chaos into a system that only knows order. You blue-screened the entire ship, kid. We hit the edge of the system and I engaged the hyperdrive. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the crippled Dreadnought vanished behind us. We were safe. The adrenaline crash is always the hardest part. My hands were shaking as I poured the coffee. It was the good stuff this time. My secret stash of real Arabica beans. Elara was sitting at the table. She was wearing the mechanic's jumpsuit again. She had rolled the sleeves up. She was scrubbing the carbon scoring off the table with a rag. Scrub, scrub, scrub. She wasn't shivering. I placed the mug in front of her. The steam curled up between us. You did good today, I said quietly. She stopped scrubbing. She looked at her hands. I broke them, she said. The perfect ship, the perfect system. I broke it. You didn't break it, I corrected, sitting down. You outsmarted it. There's a difference. I took a sip of my coffee. You know, Elara, your father made a classic mistake. The mistake all tyrants make. He thought strength came from uniformity, from everyone marching in step, from everything being shiny and new. I tapped the scarred metal of the table. But the universe isn't uniform. It's messy, it's chaotic, and it breaks things. If you're too rigid, if you can't bend, you snap. That Dreadnought, it snapped. I pointed at her. But you're like this ship, you've got scratches. You've got weird wiring. You don't fit the mold. And that is exactly why you survived. Elara looked up at me. Her violet eyes were clear. The arrogance of the princess was gone, replaced by the quiet confidence of a survivor. I am not a princess anymore, she said. A princess would have surrendered. No, I agreed. You're not a princess. You're a glitch, and I think I like glitches. I stood up and walked to the bulkhead, pulling a heavy tool belt off the hook. I tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy metallic thud. If you're going to stay on my ship, I said, you need to know how to fix what you break. That belt belonged to my last apprentice. He retired to a farm on Theta 9. It's yours now. Elara reached out and touched the leather belt. She ran her fingers over the wrenches, the screwdrivers, the hydro spanners. She picked it up. It was heavy. She didn't struggle. She stood up and buckled it around her waist. What is my first task? Captain? She asked. I grinned. Well, that scream of yours fried my comms array. You're going to rebuild it. And this time we're going to hardwire that static of yours into the main cannon. Just in case your dad comes back for round 2. I would like that, she said. And then she smiled. A real dangerous smile. I would like that very much. They tell you that to be strong you have to be perfect. They tell you to hide your scars, to fix your flaws, to fit into the little boxes they make for you. But out here in the deep dark, perfection gets you killed. It's the cracks that let the light in. It's the scars that show you've survived. So if you feel like you don't fit in, if you feel like a spare part in a world of shiny new machines, Just remember the Iron Mule. Remember the glitch that took down an empire. We aren't broken, we're just getting started. This is Ronin.End transmission.